Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to have a look at the mud mod. As you can see here, what I've got in my desktop background here, I just put an animated desktop background together so you can actually see what this video is hopefully going to be all about. I've already gone ahead and put this into the version 2 of Chellington for Farming Simulator 17, just so I can get my head around how it all works and what scripts and all the bits and pieces that I need before actually clicking record and then putting the video together. So if you're actually watching this part here and you're thinking, well, that's not actually what I wanted, then perhaps maybe this video isn't for you. Hopefully you'll watch it anyway, you might get something out of it. If you do come across this and watch this part and you think that's exactly what I was looking for, then hopefully what I will be able to put together here will give you an idea of how to go about putting it into a map of your choosing. So, or if you're creating a map or whatever else, then this may be something you want to get into. So I've got the Thorton Farm map for this is the PC version, obviously, because it requires scripts, and I don't believe that would work on the console version. I've got the Thorton Farm map because this is the only map that I know of that has it, other than the Gifts of the Caucasus map. But with that particular map, there are a lot of other scripts and bits and pieces that are all joined together, which I did have a bit of a play around with, and unfortunately my Lua scripting is limited at best. So I was unable to remove parts and get it all functioning how I wanted it just for the mud mod. I didn't want all the other bits and pieces that are on the Gifts of the Caucasus map, but luckily somebody else has done that and integrated it into the Thornton Farm map. So that's where I'm going to be taking what I need today. So what I will do first of all, I'm going to open up the Thornton Farm map folder here, and I'm going to go into the mod desk and scroll down here, and we can see we've got some scripts on our extra source files here. So I need to take a couple of scripts from here, and as I say, or what I've shown there, I've already done this, so I know what I need, which makes it a little easier. I don't want the animal pedestrian script, and I don't want the ship FS17 script, but what I do need to take from here would be the changed functions lure and the traffic manager lure. Now, from what I understand, the actual changed functions lure actually tells or instructs the main or the base game functions of the Farming Simulator 17 to make a few changes and allow certain different functions to work for your map. So you will require that one, and the traffic manager basically, from what I understand, joins all the bits and pieces together. It's more like a when it says traffic manager, it's not necessarily managing like your AI traffic on the map. It's managing the traffic of information between scripts. Again, that's my understanding of it. So I need those two scripts, at least those two scripts, to get this working. So you could just copy bits and pieces as you require it. If I actually open up the Chellington map here and open up that particular moddesk.xml and come down, now this particular map has no additional scripts or anything else on it at all. It is very straightforward, basic, standard stuff, which is perfectly fine for the map. But if you want to add some bits and pieces in, obviously you will need some extra parts. Now, if you do have a map that you're playing with that already has scripts and bits and pieces on it, you may find that you'll already have the extra source files tags. So you will only require the parts, the actual source file and the file names, and those path file names for this to work. But if, like me, you don't have those, then you will need to copy all of that, or at least the extra source files tags and the scripts that are required. But to save a little bit of time, to copy over each line individually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight the whole section here, and then Control-C to copy, come over, below my L10N section here, I'm going to basically create a couple of lines, and I'm going to paste the whole lot in like so. Now, I've already stated that I don't require these two top Lua scripts here, so I can just now highlight both of those and delete them. I find that that's a quicker way of doing it than having to copy over this line, then this line, then this line, and so on and so on. If you copy the whole lot over and just remove what you don't require. Okay, so now that I've got that into there, I don't need anything further from the actual Thornton Farm mod desk, so I can go ahead and close that down. I will then save. So if we look into the actual Thornton Farm folder structure, I need to take those scripts and copy them over onto the Chellington map. So we've got the folder structure, maps, scripts, and then the actual scripts themselves. So if I minimize this down and minimize that one down, I'll come back into the Thorton Farm folder here. So we'll go Maps, Scripts, and you can see I've got my changed functions and my traffic manager. We'll just double check those. Traffic manager and changed functions. Fantastic. So I definitely need both of those. So if I minimize that down and I bring up the Chellington one here, we'll go into Maps. Now, as you can see, this particular map, as I've already pointed out, doesn't have any scripts. So there is no scripts folder. So what I would highly recommend here is to actually just create it. You could do this a different way, but then you would have to adjust the path file names here in your mod desk. And I just think that this will keep all of your scripts structured in a particular folder and just keep them all together. So it's probably beneficial to do it somewhat similar to this. So I'm just going to name that folder scripts like so, and then I can open that one up, minimize that, and I will then just grab those two scripts. So we've got our change function and our traffic manager, and I'll just drag those across and copy them like so. Okay, so now if I open up the two scripts here in Notepad++, so we'll open this one up. You can see here straight away in this particular section at the top, it's requiring, or it's asking to register a specialization called terrain control, and it's then giving us a traffic manager current mod directory, which is maps, scripts, and then terrain control.lua. So I know that I require that particular script as well for all of this to work. So the actual path file name is being controlled by this changed functions Lua, so you don't have to have that particular path file name in your mod desk. It's being controlled from this particular script. So I'll close that one down. So we don't need to create our path file name here, it's done in that other script. So I can close all that down. So if I minimize this one again, or shrink it down a little bit, so now I also need to bring over the terrain control Lua script. So that's what I'll do, and I'll copy that over like so. Okay, excellent. I've got all of the scripts, all the path file names and whatever else all set up and controlled however they need to be controlled there. So I can go ahead and minimize that. Okay, so the other thing we need to look at here is the actual particle animations that are going to be controlled and whatever else for this particular mod to work. So if we open up the terrain control.lua here, we can see we've got another path file name in this particular script, which is maps scripts dirtps and then dirt2.i3d. So this is where I get the information from to locate that particular setup. Now luckily it's been structured in a way that it's relatively easy to find, but that particular i3d could be anywhere buried in the map. It doesn't necessarily need to be where it's been put on this map. It's just been put there for ease, I guess, whatever else, by the map creator. So thank you very much for that. So it makes it somewhat easier to find. So that's how you would locate that if you were struggling to find it. But there it is. That's the path file name you're looking for. So I can go ahead and close that because I don't need to get into the rest of that. So we do need to copy over the dirtps folder, which has our i3d in there. So again, I will open up the Chellington one here, and we then in our scripts folder, so all I need to do is just copy that folder over as well. Just keeps everything simple, straightforward. If you wanted to put that in a different folder, you could go into your terrain controller script and then change that path file name. To be honest with you, I would probably just leave it as it is. Just keeps everything structured in a simple place, easy to find and work with, and minimal editing is then required. Okay, so what we'll do here now is I'm going to need to take some parts from the actual map01.i3d to bring over to the Chellington Farm so that it all joins everything together. I'll need some texture files, distance diffuse chart files, and things like that. But we will go through that, and then I'll hopefully explain it in a way you can follow, and then just take what you need and bring it over to whatever map you're going to be putting it into. So what I'll do is I'm going to right click this and open it in Notepad++. Any other text editor will do, but I prefer Notepad++. But whatever you find it easy to work with, just go with it. So what I need to do here is I need to find the parts that I'm going to work with. Now the easiest way that I have found to do this would be to click somewhere at the top of the actual text document here, Control F to bring up your find window. You can also go edit and then go down to find, is it? Or somewhere, oh sorry, search and then find. There we go, like that. So you could do it that way if you wanted to. And I've then done this many times, but I've put in materials. So we go find what materials. And if I click find next and then find next again, it will bring me down to the bottom of the materials section, and this is where all the magic work sort of happens, down in this section here. So what I'm looking for here is the actual foliage multi-layer for our dirt, sand and gravel sections to do with the actual dirt mod itself. So this part here is what I need to copy across. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of this section here, making sure that I've got the actual foliage multi-layer start tag and end tag incorporated in with that, set all of that information. I can go ahead and press Ctrl C to copy all that information. Now again, this is the best way I find to do this. Create a new text document here and then paste it in like so. So we need to find a few other parts here to join all this together. So the first thing I need to find here is the actual density map ID, and we're given a number of 115. So if I double click that, Ctrl C to copy it, come back over into my Thorton Farm map here, I'm going to go all the way back to the top, Ctrl F to bring up my window again, and I'll paste in the 115. Now I would suggest that you, if you're using Notepad++, click the match whole word only box here, so it only looks for 115 on its own, not 115 which is incorporated within another number somewhere. Just makes it a little easier to find what you're looking for. If you're working with a different text editor, then there may be a different procedure, but this is what I need to do for Notepad++. So I'm going to go find next, and it will then bring me down to my file ID of 115 for the map01 dirty underscore density.png. That's what I require. So I'm going to highlight that line, Ctrl C to copy it, come over to my new text document here. I'll create a couple of lines and then I'm going to paste that in. Excellent. So the next thing I need to look at here is the material IDs. So I'm going to look down into my sections at the top here. So we've got our dirty sand and dirty gravel. So if we come across, we've got our first material ID of 387. So I need to double click on that, copy it with Ctrl C, come back over. It's always best if you can to start from the top of the actual text document, because these are not alphanumeric, they're just all over the place. So if you were to try and search for them, you possibly could be there for a very long time. And if you happen to continue your search on from somewhere, maybe down here from your last search, the number actually might be above that last search, so it will end up having to go all the way to the end of the text document and start again. So it's always best, if you can, to come to the top of the text document to start your search. So again, we'll go Ctrl F, paste in our new number of 387, again with our match whole word only box ticked. We'll go find next. Now what we're looking for here is a material ID, not a file ID, so we can ignore that one. So we'll go find next again, and we come down to our material ID. So fantastic, we've got our material ID of 387 there. So I need to copy all of that information, because that's our dirty material texture or information, the material. That's what's going to be put down onto the actual map itself. So I need to copy all of that with the materials tags as well. So Ctrl C to copy that. I'll come back over. Again, I'm going to come into my new text document here, create a couple of lines, and then paste that in there like so. So we'll continue on with the next one, sand. So if we come across, we've got a material ID of 121. So I'll copy that number, come back over, go to the top of my text document, Ctrl F to bring up my window, Ctrl C to paste it in, find next. We don't want a file ID, we want a material ID. So I'll go find next again. We've got our material ID, fantastic. So now I can copy that and then bring that over into my new text document here. So that's what I'll do. And then the next one we need to find for our gravel is 467. So highlight that number, copy it, come back over, go back to the top of the text document, Ctrl F, Ctrl V to paste in our new number. Again, we're looking for a material ID, not a file ID. So we need to keep going. That's a file ID, so that's no good to us. Continue on down, we have our material ID of 467. Fantastic. And we can look at the actual number, the name of it, which is dirty gravel. So that's basically giving us indication also that we're in the right place. So we can go ahead and copy all of that information, bring that over, put that into my new text document as well. Fantastic, magic. So next thing I need to do here is have a look at our file IDs. So I'm going to skip a little bit up here. I'll come back to that in a minute for our distance diffuse channels and whatever else. But first of all, I want to find my actual texture files. So what I need to look at here in my material ID section, or the materials section here, is our texture file ID, which for our dirty material, which is just our standard dirt, we have our 117. So if I highlight that number, Control C to copy, come back over. Now this is obviously very repetitive, but it is necessary. I can see here that I've got 117, 118 and 119 all together, and they all are referring to dirt. So if I go back into my new text document, I can actually check those file IDs for all of the different materials, our dirt, sand and gravel. Check those file IDs, and we actually have 117, 118 and 119, which is what we have here. So to save me having to search for each one individually, in this particular case, luckily, they've all been placed within the i3D for Thorton Farm where I need them to be. So really easy to copy those as a unit, so I don't have to search for them individually. Like I say, that may not always be the case, but in this particular case it is, so that's really fantastic for me. Just saves a little bit of time. So I can highlight all three of those, Control C to copy, come back over, and I'm going to put them up with my other file ID here, which is why I spaced it in this particular fashion, and I'll paste them in like so. Excellent. Okay, so now what I can do is I'm going to go back to my foliage multilayer section here, because I need to find the actual distance diffuse channels. So if we come across a little bit, I can see here I've got our distance map IDs, and they are all set up at 116. We have one there, and one there, and they're all set up at 116, so they share the same distance diffuse map ID. So I can double click on 116 there, Control C to copy that, come back over. You may get lucky and find it straight away, but if you don't see it straight away, again we can click at the top of the text document here, Control F to bring up our search window, paste in our 116, click find next, and it comes down to what we require. So I can go ahead and now copy that text line there, come back over, and I will then just paste this in as well. And I will probably put that, you can put it wherever you want, but whatever works for you, and I'll put it there somewhere like that. You may even want to keep this somewhat in a numeric section, so you could always put it within there like there, so it goes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There you go, whatever. Have an experiment with that and see what works for you best. So we'll leave it at that for now, just so it keeps everything structured. That's fine. Okay, so we've got all of those bits and pieces. What we're going to require to put into the map 0103D on the Chellington Farm map, but I also need to take or find the actual texture files and the density PNG and all the rest of it, what all of these bits, path file names and everything are pointing to, because you can have all this information, but if you haven't got the other parts, then obviously it's not going to work. So first of all, I'm going to look in the map01 folder and find the dirty underscore density.png. There's probably not a PNG, it's probably a GDM or something like that, but we'll get to that in a minute. I will leave that open for now just in case, but so I'll minimize that, and in the Thornton Farm map here, I'm going to go into map01 and we have our dirty density.gdm. So what I need to do is bring that over into Thornton Farm. So if I go back into Thornton Farm, we'll go into maps, map01, and then what I need to do is basically copy that and then bring it over into there. So you don't want to move it from there, because obviously you'll break the Thornton Farm map. So we're just going to copy it and then paste it into here. Now this is the way I would probably recommend to do it, simply because we don't want to leave that as a GDM. What I need to do is convert that into a PNG, so that I can work with the map and get everything set up, because we're moving it to a different map. So I need to convert it so that I can work with it in a better way. You may find that without converting it, it would work just the same, but I would probably suggest to convert it anyway, and then allow GiantServer to actually update it once you've had a bit of a play around on the map. This is the way I'm going to do it. You can experiment again and see whatever works for you. So just make sure we're in the right map. So Chellington, excellent. So I'll minimize this or shrink it down a little bit. Now I've got the GRLE converter version 7.0.1. Download this from the Giants Developer Network. I'll put a link in the description. You may be able to find it on different mod sites or whatever else. Just go find it, download it, whatever, and then work with it. So what I need to do now is create or convert this using the convert tool And the reason why I've copied this into the Chellington map is because the way the converter works, it's going to convert it within my actual Chellington map01 folder. So I don't need to copy it over into this folder and then copy it back and so on and so on forth. By just copying it at one time and bringing it into here, I can then use the converter, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So with the actual dirty underscore density.gdm highlighted here, I'm just going to literally left click, drag it, and I'm going to hover it over the convert.command where it says open with convert.command, and I'm going to release. And it'll bring up my DOS window here, and it will just run that particular setup, that program, and it will then convert it, and it's saying saving to dirty underscore density.png, press any key to continue, which we will then do. So I can now close the converter down, and if we actually look now, we have two dirty underscore density files, but one is a GDM still, and one is now showing as a PNG. So what I want to do is I want to delete the GDM because I don't need that. I want to get rid of that so that Giants Editor looks at just the PNG and then carries out its conversion and puts it back to a GDM once I have finished editing the map and getting it all set up. Again, like I say, this is how I'm going to do it, or this is why I'm doing it. This way you can experiment and do it a different way by not converting it and just using the GDM. However you want to play around with that, experiment with it, see what you get out of it. But this is how I'm going to do it. So now that we've got that into there, that's fantastic. So if we go back into our text document here, we need to find the next parts. So the next parts I want to look at here, if we continue on down, we've done this one here, the actual density file. So the next one we'll look at is the distance diffuse channel. So we need to go into our textures, terrain, distance, and then the dirt underscore diffuse to distance dist.png. So we need to find that. So this is again from the Thorton Farm map. So what I need to do here is bring up the Thorton Farm map again, the folder here, and we'll go into textures, terrain, distance, and we've got our dirt underscore diffuse to dist.dds. So I'm going to go ahead and Control C to copy that. Go back over to Chellington, and we'll go maps, textures, terrain, distance, Control V to paste it in. Keeps the path file name the same, just makes everything a little easier to find, and it then limits the amount of changes I need to make in the actual file structure here and whatever else for my path file names. Okay, so moving on. So the next parts I need to find are the actual textures for the dirt, the gravel, and whatever else we're going to put on the map, which is in our foliage folder. So we can see here that the actual // is indicating that it's previous to the folder where our map01.i3d is. So if we minimize that down, we can go back into Chellington Farm folder here. And if we were looking at this, we can see that the actual map01.i3d folder is there, and it's showing with that // that it's previous to that folder. So we have our foliage folder here. So if we open that up, we can see we've got our dirt diffuse 234. So we need to copy all of those. So I'm going to go ahead and Control C to copy, go back into the Chellington Farm map, open up the foliage folder there, and then paste it in. Again, that keeps the path file name, the actual structure, the same as what it was for Thornton, and again reduces the amount of editing we need to do within our information here. Excellent. So we've now got all of that. We've got all of our bits and pieces and everything else we've taken from there. So what I need to do now though is have a bit of a play around. Before I do that, I'm just going to have a pause for a second and grab a drink, and I will be back in a little bit. So as I was saying, we need to make a couple of changes here, because when I bring this information over into the Chellington Farm map, it will more than likely be using these particular numbers already. Your file IDs and your density map IDs and everything else, more than likely they will be already in use. So we can't have duplicates of those, because obviously this won't work. It won't be able to find what it's looking for, or it will try to find the wrong thing and then cause conflicts within the map01i3d and just fail to work properly, cause errors within stuff that's already on the map, and so on and so on. So we need to make a few changes to those numbers and allow Giants Editor to then update them accordingly. So what we need to do is actually change these numbers, and the easiest way I find to do that is to just add 100 in front of all of them. By doing that, you've got no way of sort of typing or whatever else, because if you start putting up here, 110101, and then you've got to come down here and type exactly the same, you could always cut and paste it and so on and so on. But I find that it's just easier. You don't need to worry about what's what and where's what and all the rest of it, because you can see it's all kind of integrated all over the place. So it just can sometimes be a bit of you can put one number incorrectly and cause a massive failure of the entire lot. So just by putting 100 in front of each number just makes it somewhat easier to work with, and that's how I'm going to do it anyway. So again, experiment and use a method that works best for you. So if I put 100 in front of that one, and then we come down to our material ID here, and I'm going to put 100 there, and again over here, and I'll just do all of these, and you can just follow along. And also not forgetting your actual distance map IDs up here, so we need to change these ones as well. So we'll scroll across, change those, like so. Then we can come back down to our material IDs and change those as well for the actual file IDs, material IDs, and so on and so on. Must make sure you do it for all of these, the actual IDs themselves, because this is where it all joins together, and this one looks at this one and that one and so on and so on. And if you just get one not quite right, it will then, again as I said before, cause a conflict within the map01.i3d. Okay, so we've got all of those changed, I believe. Yep, looking good. So one thing we do need to look at before we go ahead and add all of this in, the actual custom shader ID in this particular case is using the WinRow custom shader, or the WinRow shader, or whatever it's called. So we need to find out whether the Chellington map is using the same one as Thorton Farm is. More than likely it will be, but just to be sure that it actually is, we need to check that. So I'm still on the Thorton Farm here, and I'm just going to show you what I'm actually talking about, because I've possibly not made that very clear. So what I will do is, if I actually take the number here, 80, Control C to copy that, we'll come back over into the map 013 i3d for Thornton, Control F to bring up my window again, paste in the 80, and we'll go find next. And we come down to this file ID of 80 with a path file name here of shaders and WinRow Foliage shader.xml. That's what that's pointing to. And we need to basically check on the Chellington Farm map that that is the same number for the WinRow Foliage shader there. So what I would say is do your search, and then you can take the actual name. So if we copy the WinRow Foliage shader there, Control C to copy that, what I can do now is actually go back into the Chellington Farm map, and if I then go into Maps, right click on the the map 01.i3d, we'll open that in Notepad++. I can now go Control F in this one, make sure that you uncheck the match whole word only box if you've already checked it, and we'll paste that in, and if I go find next, it will then bring me down, and it is showing us a file ID of 80. So they are the same. It's definitely worth doing that check just to be sure, because if it is a different number, obviously it won't display correctly in game. So it is worth just checking that before you proceed with anything further. So we're good there, excellent. So what I can do now is actually close down the i3d for the map on Thornton, because I don't need that any further. We've made all of our necessary changes here, so I can now start bringing over this information. Now I'm going to start with the actual file IDs, so if I go to those and Control C to copy, I'm going to bring them all over together in one lump. I always find that it's easier to put them at the top, so that's what we'll do. We'll click at the top here, create a new line, and then paste them in. And when you paste them in, you can also just double check that those numbers are changed to whatever you want to change them to, and they are, so that's great. We'll move on next down to the actual material ID section. So again, I'm going to highlight all of them. Because they all work together, in this particular case, you will need to do all of them. Whereas in the past, I've always said that when you're working with material IDs and things like that, when you're adding in additional fruit types and whatever, it's best to do one at a time and then test it. But in this particular case, all of these parts work together. So if you miss one part out, then potentially the rest of the mod won't work. So in this particular case, you are required, or you will be required, to copy all of it in one particular lump, if you like, one section. But that's perfectly fine. As long as you've adjusted all the numbers and everything else correctly, should have no problems. Okay, so with all of that highlighted, I'm going to again go Control-C to copy that. And we need to come down to the bottom of our material section again. So I'm going to go Control-F, bring up my search, and I've again done this many times, so I've already got the materials in my drop down. Chances are you'll have the same if you've already done this. If not, just type it in, and we'll click Find Next, and this will bring us to the top. I need to go Find Next again, so it brings me to the bottom of the material section. And then I'm going to create a new line, so I'm going to click the end tag for the last material on the actual list here, press Enter, create my new line, and then paste it all in. Again, just a quick look through to see that we have actually changed all of our numbers correctly. So we've got that one changed, that one, we've got our 80, so that's fine, that one's fine, that one's fine, that one and that one, so they're fine. Excellent. So they've all been changed, and they all will hopefully now join together. It should be no problem there. So the next thing I need to do is bring over the actual foliage multilayer, and I've done it in this particular way by adding in each section, because you start at the file ID. When we actually go through our map01.03d, we actually start at file IDs, then we come down to materials, and then the next part after that is our foliage multilayers. So we can just scroll down and we come to those. So the last thing we need to do here is bring over our actual foliage multi-layers. So I need to highlight all of those. Control-C to copy that. We'll come over into our map01.03d again. So we've got our material IDs here, and all we need to do now is just scroll down, because we actually have our foliage multi-layers. They're not too far down from the end of the materials tag, which is why I structured it like this and added them in as I did, because it's just sort of consecutive. It just comes down the line sort of thing as it comes through the map01.03d. So we'll come down. What we're looking for here is the detail layer, because they need to be added in above that detail layer section. So by clicking on the foliage multilayer end tag here, I'm going to press Enter on the keyboard, and then I'm just going to basically paste them in like so. So we've now got our new foliage multilayer with its new density map ID number and all the other parts, and our dirt, dirty sand, and our dirty gravel. So we've got all those parts. All of our distance map IDs have been changed, so fantastic. We've got everything we need there, so I can go ahead and save that. I'm going to close that down. I'll leave that as it is for now, just in case I do need to come back to it. So we'll minimize that down. So we don't need that anymore. We've copied over everything into the Chellington Farm map 01.03d, and we've copied all of our textures. We've got our foliage textures, we've got our distance map IDs. If we go into here, terrain, distance, we've got all of our parts in there, and everything else. So if we've done everything as we should have done with our scripts and changes to the mod desk, we can now actually go into the map01.03d in Giants Editor. I'm using Giants Editor 7.0.5, I believe that's still the latest version. We'll double click that and open that up. Now, what I would suggest is when you actually open this up for the first time, once you've made the changes here, is to have a look in the console down the bottom here. If this isn't open, so if you end up opening Giants Editor and it isn't there, just go to Window and then come down to Console, which will then open that up, and you can scroll down. It'll give you all of your information for your computer, what specs it is and all stuff like that. And you can obviously drag this and make it bigger or whatever you want to do. So once you've actually got this open, if we come down through, you can see here that we've opened up. It's actually showing us here that we've opened up the Chellington 17 version 2 maps map01.03d and the milliseconds it took to open the map up, and it's saying that Giant Editor is checking for updates to the version that I've got, and there are none, so that's fantastic. What is also fantastic is it's showing no errors. There's no warnings, no errors, no nothing. So far that's giving me the indication that what I've done is working. So what we need to do here is find an area on the map. Doesn't really matter because we're not going to save it just yet. What we need to do is find an area on the map that we actually want to put this down. Now, as I've shown in my desktop background here, this is where I've put it on the particular map, and that's what I'm going to be doing again. Just make it a little easier. Now, I actually removed these sections, these sort of humpy bumpy bits, whatever you want to call those. Leave them in if you want to, if you're going to be doing this particular map. But for me, I don't want them there, so I'm going to go ahead and delete them. I think the actual mud mod is going to give me, what I need, so I don't require those bits. And then what we're looking to do here is basically save the map, because what I want to do is, before I start getting into actually putting down the mud and everything else, I want to actually save the map and update the i3D file. This will change some parameters and bits and pieces within the map01.i3d and join all the bits and pieces together before I put down the mud, because now what I'm going to do is actually put the mud down, but I'm going to exit out without saving just yet, just in this particular session. So by saving, I've made the changes to the i3D, but I'm not going to affect anything else on the map itself. This also creates my GDM. It converts my PNG, my dirty underscore density PNG to a GDM, and which I can then exit out of Giant Editor and delete the PNG, which we'll do in a little bit, and I'll show you that before I start making some massive changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll down here. I've got my terrain editing window. Again, if this isn't open, so if you haven't got it at all, you just go into Window, Terrain Editing, and it'll pop up. You can drag this, put it wherever you want, and then work with that however you want to do it. You might want it over this side, just have a play around with it, whatever suits you. I quite like it there, so that's where I'm going to leave it. So we'll go down in our Foliage multi-layer here, and if we've done everything somewhat right here, we'll have some new textures within our Foliage layer, which we've actually got now: dirty sand, and dirty gravel. So if I click on the dirty one, I need to go to my terrain foliage paint mode, and I can then paint that down, and that's what we'll basically get, something like that. So if you want dirt, that's what you need to do. If you don't want dirt, then what you need to do is change the actual foliage channel. So we'll remove the tick from 0 and go to 1. We'll paint that down, and we now have dirty sand. So if we remove that, we'll remove the 1, go to 2, and we now have dirty gravel. So whichever one works for you, whatever you're going to be experimenting with on the map, and where you're going to be putting it and all the rest of it, will depend possibly on which one of these you will be using. But what I'm pointing out here is that you don't need to click on dirty sand or dirty gravel. The actual foliage layer is controlled with the actual channels, so it doesn't matter if I'm on dirty gravel, it will still work in the same way. If I'm on dirty gravel but I have foliage channel 0 selected, I will still put mud down until I choose 2. Do you see what I mean? Hopefully that makes sense. But again, it'll be just a bit of experimenting to see and understand that potentially for yourselves. Have a bit of a play around and see what you get out of it. Okay, so before I go any further, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close down. I'm not going to save again because I've already done that. So what I want to do now is I want to go back into my map 01, and if we look here, we've got our dirty underscore density PNG, but we've now got our dirty underscore density.gdm, and that's the one I require, but I don't require this one. So with this one highlighted, I can now go ahead and delete that, get rid of it. So now that I've got that, I can reopen the map. I do this is the way I do it. Again, you may want to do it somewhat differently. Again, that's up to you entirely. Now, once we've got the map open again, what I will just say is, word of warning, because we've taken all of this from a different map, you may find that the areas on Thorton Farm that had each one of those foliage layers put down, whether it be the dirty or dirty sand or dirty gravel, you may find that if you actually searched around on the map, you might find that those particular parts of the map representing the area on Thorton Farm are now showing the dirty bits on Chellington. So what you will probably need to do here is remove all of that from the map that you're going to be importing into. Now the easiest way I would probably say to do that would be to zoom right out. So if you want to, your nav speed here, you can increase that to make it a little easier to move around. You do that by the plus and minus on your numpad on your keyboard. So if I press plus, you can see the number is increasing, and if I press minus, obviously it goes down. So I'm going to put this up to somewhat 80 some odd, and you can see now I will actually move around the map much quicker than the setting I had it on before. So if you do open up Giants Editor for your very first time, whatever else, and this is set to really low, you could possibly have this down as low as maybe 10 or something like that when you first open it up, and then your movement around the map will be really slow. So you might want to increase that number just to give you a little bit more speed to get around the map, sort of thing. However you want to do that. I find sort of high 70s, 80s works for me until I'm getting into sort of close proximity to something, and then I want to slow it down a little bit, but that's how I would do that. Anyway, so if I zoom all the way out, what I'm going to do here is I want to make my brush really big, because I want to be able to remove all of the areas on the map that may potentially have these new foliage layers on. So again, it doesn't matter which one you choose because they all share the same density map ID. So irregardless of which one you choose, you will be able to remove all of them together if there are more than one of them on the map, whatever. So what I want to do, and because they use only that density map ID, there's no fear of removing anything else. So you won't start removing fields and grass and stuff like that by doing this. Now, if I actually, again, open up my terrain foliage paint mode, I get my brush, and even if I go all the way up to radius of 50, this is still really small. Even if I change it to square from round, it's still really small. So it would take me quite a long time to actually go over the whole map, and I still may miss parts. So the way I get around that is to actually come over to my radius box here, and if I actually click in that box, I can type a number in there that I want the brush to actually go to. So once I've typed the number in, if I press tab on my keyboard, you can now see that my brush size has got really big. This gives me the opportunity to now cover a much larger area in one foul swoop, so to speak. So what I do now is just literally press my right mouse button and drag. Now this possibly will cause your system to slow down, may even lock up, freeze. So you'll need to play around with that and just see how it works for you. Again, I'll do it one more time. I've let go of the mouse, but it's still catching up. And once it catches up, you'll then see that the box will move. If you've got a really high-end PC, mine's fairly high-end. It's running a Intel i7, is it, and a GTX 980 superclocked, and 16 gig of RAM and bits and pieces, SSDs, all that sort of stuff. So if you've got a higher spec PC than that, you know, you're running SLI and things like that, or Crossfire and whatever, you may find that you won't get any lag and it won't crash. But if you're running a much lower spec PC, then you know you may have to adjust this. So you might want to put this down to maybe 500, have a slightly smaller box, and then do the same thing again, and right click and drag, and you may not then experience quite so much lag and whatever else. But again, that'll be on you to experiment, depending on your PC spec and stuff like that. So what I will do now is I'm just going to put this back to a sensible size, just so it doesn't, when I open Giants Editor again, I don't suddenly find over the massive brush. Just makes it a little easier. So I'm going to click off of that. If we come back in again, you can see that I've removed none of the grass. All my fields are still intact. I still have my wheat, barley, and so on and so on. All the other bits and pieces, no problem whatsoever. So the only thing I would be removing there by doing that would be those particular foliage channels, nothing else. So don't start panicking and thinking that you're going to suddenly wipe out half your map by doing that, because you won't. So if I can now find where I was before, what we will do now is come back to here, and I'm going to go ahead and save, just so it updates that density map ID and whatever else with my changes. So I do it in stages. If you start doing too much in one particular session, so by removing all of that potential foliage layer from the map, like I've just done there, by not saving and then trying to add in a lot more information, that is when potentially Giant's Editor will crash on you and you'll have to start the whole process all over again. By saving and doing little steps, little bits at a time, it reduces the chance that Giant's Editor will crash out on you or lock up or whatever else. And also, if it then does, you've saved, so all you've got to do is just close down whatever you need to close down, reopen Giant's Editor, and go from where you were, instead of having to then, again, as I say, start from scratch. Okay, so we're going to come into the area here that I want to put my mud down. I'm only going to do this particular area. Again, this will be on you to experiment with the other foliage layers and where you want to put it on your map and all the rest of it. So again, I'm going to come down to my foliage layer painting. I've already got dirty layers selected. I want dirt, so I want foliage channel 0. So again, I'm going to highlight my terrain foliage paint mode. I might just change my brush back to round just for this particular area, and I'm just going to paint the section in here of mud. Now you might want to adjust the terrain, sort of lower it down or whatever else below the mud, so you actually do represent driving into a ditch or whatever, or a mud hole or whatever. But for me, for this particular video, I'm just going to go with this for now. Again, that'll be on you to experiment with and work with. I wouldn't dig too much of a big hole, because the terrain control script, the way that this actually works, when you drive into the mud, if you haven't experienced it before, it will actually slow your vehicle down. So if you start digging too big holes and stuff like that, or too big of a hole, then chances are you may find you'll end up getting stuck with your machinery, especially if you're using the lowest sort of end of the machinery, your Dutz Far sort of low starter tractors and things like that. You may find that if you dig a big hole and then fill it with mud, you might find that you'll just end up getting stuck, even if you have four-wheel drive and all the rest of the stuff on it. So it will end up just being a hindrance more than an addition to the map. So for me, I'm just going to go with this, but you can experiment with that as well. Okay, so now that I've got that onto there, I'm going to just click off of that, deactivate that, and again I'm going to go ahead and save. So we're pretty much done here on the desktop, and all the parts that I've got to put together and whatever else. Hopefully you've been able to follow that. We'll close down all of this stuff. Hopefully you've been able to follow all of the parts that I've done so far, and what you will see will hopefully represent what you can see now on my desktop here. We will have MudMod into the Chellington Farm map, and it will all be working. So what I'll do is I'll zip up the folder, I'll put it into my mods folder, we'll get into game, and then we'll have a bit of a play around there. So I will see you in a little bit when we get into game. Okay, so here we are in game. I've just literally jumped into this Massey Ferguson here, come out the main farm here, so not too far. And we'll just drive down to the area where we've put the mud down, and we'll see what happens. So hopefully we get what we require. Okay, just on the left here. So this hopefully will represent what we had, or what I showed on my desktop here. So I'll just come out external, and there we go. So we have our mud. Now I've actually put drive control mod in, so we can actually have two-wheel drive, so you can see the mud, you know, really flicking about all over the place. If I put a bit of four-wheel drive on here, obviously now get our front wheels as well. They're all slipping and sliding and all the rest of it. So excellent, all working exactly how I wanted it to. Fantastic. So yeah, as I say, you could sort of dig some, you know, put some holes underneath, you know, little sort of not too deep, just little ones, just to give you perhaps maybe a bit more of a representation of an actual mud hole or whatever. But I'll leave you to experiment with that and see how you get on. But for me, this is probably about as far as I would go, because the more holes you start digging, as I said before, you could just end up literally being stuck in this stuff forever. So yeah, anyway, there we go. I think we're done. I've not really gone into the gravel and stuff like that, but I'll leave you to experiment with that as well. Hopefully this was of some use to those of you who wish to have a bit of a play around with this. Those of you who didn't even know it existed, hopefully you will have a bit of a play and again get something from it. It is really a fantastic mod. I really enjoyed in small portions. That's the thing you've got to look at, I think, with this particular mod. Some maps for 15 it was all over the place and it got a bit sort of annoying from time to time, but if it's done, you know, properly and in moderation on maps, it really does add something to the map itself. So I'm going to say thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.